hello and happy Thursday, everyone. This is Pam with Perfectly Holistic, and we are back for some great education and fun tonight. I have a very special guest who I can't wait to introduce to you guys because for those of you who've been following me for a long time, you may know that I absolutely love homeopathy. I love using it with cats because it's so easy, and it's truly I guess just like the best hidden secret when it comes to alternative healing and ways to provide cures, like heal, actual cures, treatments that work and can bring you results. And it's so easy. So please join me in welcoming my friend Jody Teiche. She is a pet parent and pet health coach and practitioner. Sorry, I got stuck on the words.
You got it.
And you are joining us tonight, and she's in Austin. She's like my neighbor. She's like 25 minutes away from me. So we're excited to chat with you guys tonight and teach you something. So before we get started, I just want to remind you guys that we are recording this. So if you can't be here live, you're going to be able to see it later. You can drop a comment over here in the chat and let us know what questions you have. We are going to try to answer questions tonight as well. But if you're watching, say hello. Let us know you're here. We'd love to shout out to you. And we appreciate you guys joining us tonight. So Jody, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Pam. I'm really excited to meet your tribe, share with your tribe. And yes, we're neighbors. We're like dinner neighbors sometimes too. So it's really nice to meet on this platform, in this forum. And thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want you to tell.
Have somebody to say hi that wants to say hi. She's like clockwork. She jumped in my lap just as you were starting. This is Suki. And she is our little rescue. Suki, want to say hi? She's like, Mommy, I really don't want you to be holding me like this right now. Okay, fine, Suki.
And I'm hoping that mine will show up. I have 4 around here somewhere. Or no,
I know 2 beautiful relatively new babies.
Yeah, I think they're. Last time I saw them there a few minutes ago, they were sitting in their hammock together.
Oh, so cute.
I was like,
so cute.
My heart. But yeah, so sweet. So anyway, Jody, let's talk about your journey. Tell us a little bit about your background, how you got started, because I think it's, people don't remember facts necessarily, but they remember stories. And so everybody has a story. Everybody has a journey. And I think that's what we go through in life to frame what we're doing and guide us into stuff we're doing. So tell everybody your story.
Sure. Well, my story of how I got into this started in my local public library in Chappaqua, New York. I was with my 3-year-old daughter at the time. This was 34 years ago. And she was playing in the aisles, and I was just looking up. I looked up at the row of books above me, and there were 2 books next to each other. There was a book on medicinal plants and a beginner's guide to homeopathy. And I just reached up and pulled that one.
Mm.
And I opened it up and started leafing through it, started reading, and was fascinated. So I took it out. I read it from cover to cover. I bought my own copy, sent away to the then American Homeopathic Institute in Washington, D.C. for my starter kit. And I never looked back. And then a year later, the 3 generations of girls, my mom, me, and my daughter, were in Florida on a vacation. And Morgan, my daughter, came down with an ear infection. And it was a bad ear infection. And I got the antibiotic. I put it in the fridge. I wanted to be a responsible mom. I had a homeopath at the time based in London. And we communicated, and because I was still relatively new at homeopathy back then, and we together arrived at a remedy. I got that remedy, gave it to Morgan. My mom and I stayed up with her all night. And by the next morning, her fever broke. By noon, she was a normal 4-year-old running around like a little lunatic. And that was the end of that. And it's been 34 years, 33 years. She's never had another ear infection. Whereas my nephews, ear infection antibiotic, ear infection, antibiotic, ear infection, antibiotic, tubes in the ears. This was their whole childhood.
Right.
So that for me was a game changer, and that was my why.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And just out of curiosity, which remedy did you choose?
Oh my God, it was 33 years ago. I don't remember anymore. I have no idea.
No worries. I was just curious if you.
Yeah, I don't know, but it worked. It worked. And I had help from a very, very experienced homeopathic physician.
Yeah.
So that was a major plus.
That's
He introduced me to homeopathy along with, like, after I found that book, a friend, because I was in the music and the entertainment industry at the time.
Yeah.
He turned me on to his doctor, and he became my doctor, and he further introduced me to homeopathy. So,
Mhm.
yes.
Now, did you end up using the antibiotic or not?
No. No, I know.
Yeah,
Never.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
I think that's why Morgan never got another ear infection, because, when you use an antibiotic, it does the work. First of all, it's a suppressive, but it also does the work for your body for whatever is going on. So it becomes a weak spot.
Mhm.
And if you keep taking antibiotics for this weak spot, it gets weaker and weaker. So it's the thing that pops up most often when your immune system is compromised, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, I think that's one reason she never got another one. Oh, God, Suki is all over me. Suki!
Everywhere,
She's right here in my lap. Yes. I know. You can relate.
Just having a cat, that fur in the face and the mouth.
Oh, I know, but I don't mind. I don't mind. I love her.
No, absolutely not. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, okay, so fast forward a little bit. You obviously were sold on homeopathy way back then,
Yeah.
and you continue to use it all these years.
Yeah.
Were there other
On and off.
modalities that you were using as well?
Were there what? Other modalities?
Other modalities that you were exploring at the time as well?
Yeah, I did a little work with herbs.
Mhm.
I was always into very healthy eating, which
Yep.
to me is always the foundation of the house, right?
Mhm.
And so I did a lot of research into nutrition. So yeah, I think other forms of energy medicine came a little later for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like the frequency scanner and,
Mhm.
that sort of thing, hands-on work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
yes.
Right. So what was the next part of your journey? Because obviously you didn't just wake up one day and just decide to be a pet health coach and a people.
No, and I fell off the homeopathy wagon for a little while too. My first career was as a publicist in the entertainment industry in New York City. And for 25 years, I had my own company. And we had a lot of, famous musicians that I represented. Sorry, I'm just
No,
Suki.
Spooky love.
And I did a lot of red carpet events and
Mhm.
and album launches and whatnot. But it was never really me. I always loved healing, and I always was involved in natural healing in one form or another. And I always was an animal nut. I had animals growing up, all different types of animals, begged my father for a horse for 7 years, finally got a horse, And so when I left the entertainment industry, I got into the pet industry, but it wasn't as a healer. It was more, first it was as a designer, because I
Mhm.
also love fashion. And then it sort of morphed into being a blogger about rescue
Mhm.
and about lifestyle.
Yeah.
And that was under Bark and Swagger, and I did that for a little while, and I still have a podcast where I interview designers and rescuers and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But it was probably about 4 years ago when I said, I am at a certain point in my life now. I love animals so much. They're my happy place. I love natural medicine. Natural medicine about 3 or 4 years ago cured me from a year-long intestinal issue that nothing else worked for. So I said, why don't I just marry the two? Animals need so much help. I was seeing how more and more pet parents, my friends, were talking to me about how, frustrated they were because their vets would be giving them pharmaceuticals for their animals and it wouldn't solve the problem because as soon as they would stop, if it was a palliative, the symptoms would come right back. Other symptoms would pop up, side effects. And they were looking for more and more natural things. More and more pet parents were doing this. So it seemed like it was a real need. And the world, as we, came close to COVID and then went into COVID, the world really, really needed more healing. I mean, we saw this in the couple of years leading up to COVID, and I saw this too. There was a lot of anger. There was a lot of divisiveness and division, and people were looking for something more.
Yeah.
So for all those reasons, I decided to put the two together and to do that. And I got certified as a pet homeopathic educator. I created a course on homeopathy and nutrition that I gave live a couple of times. And my pet parents, my students loved it, thank goodness. And so that was a really great indicator that it was needed and that what I was giving was wanted.
Yes.
And I've grown from there. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
Now you have personally used homeopathy with your own pets.
Yes.
So like in years. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, I have two things to share.
Yeah.
One is this one's Miss Suki. She came to us. I'm in Austin now, but before this, I lived in Fort Lauderdale for a few years. And my then husband and I had a factory, and people would drop cats off that they didn't want anymore at this factory. So there was a small feral community there. And Suki was one of the cats that was dumped. I don't think she was in that community very long because I don't think she has a feral bone in her body. But I got a call from the woman who owned the factory one day, who I had bonded with over rescue. She rescued dogs and cats, and she took care of all those cats. She fed them and she got them spayed and neutered and all that stuff. And she said, look, two of the cats got into a fight, and I only have the bandwidth to take one to the vet and home to recuperate. Do you think you guys would be willing to take the other one? And my husband already knew these cats because they hung around the factory, and my husband and his adult son would feed them too, and pet them, and they're animal lovers. So we said yes. And we went and got her, and I took her to the vet, and the vet, she had a really, really bad infection that went to the bone. So we did use antibiotics, but at the same time, I knew that I wanted her on homeopathic remedies because I wanted to support her body, especially because she was on antibiotics.
Right.
So I gave her a series of things. I started her on arnica for inflammation and whatever internal bruising came from this fight. Her back paws were a mess. And then I went to hypericum because of nerve endings. There are so many nerve endings in those toes, right?
Yes.
And then I put her on gunpowder.
Okay.
Gunpowder was great because that was really good for deep infections, especially bone. So using all of those in succession, she healed up beautifully. And we've never, she's a little gimpy looking on her back legs, but she has never had a problem again. And we were able to get off the antibiotics swiftly and never look back. So
That's
that's one, yeah, that's one story. But the other one that's much more recent is one that I'm actually um, really excited about because it involves, I know this is a cat community, but maybe some of your cat parents also have dogs. This is involving my dog, Sophie.
yeah, they do.
Yeah, you and I talked about Sophie, and Sophie was diagnosed with congestive heart failure in the middle of April. We had come out of living in a mold house for 10
Mm,
months that we didn't know. And I do feel strongly, as does her doctor, do her doctors, that living in that house, in that environment for 10 months put her grade 3 heart murmur over the edge into congestive heart failure. But here we are. So I got a beautiful veterinary team, a conventional cardiologist who claims she is the most woo-woo of the practice. I said, great. Um, and then a homeopathic veterinarian out of New Orleans and an integrative vet out of Pennsylvania, Yardley, Pennsylvania, who was trained by Marty Goldstein, Dr. Marty Goldstein,
nice.
who some of you might recognize, who's a friend. He used to be my vet when I lived in New York.
Nice.
And yeah, so between the three, Sophie was put on a beautiful, yes, we did conventional because she ended up, this journey started in the emergency room.
Mm,
It was like an anvil over the head. She
yeah.
started coughing, and then all of a sudden she started tremoring. And then we went to the doctor immediately, and they gave her a complete physical. And this vet said, she's okay. Wrong. And literally within 24 hours, I really didn't like the way she looked. And I took her to the emergency room. And the cardiologist there diagnosed her. They did an echo and they diagnosed her. So it was like an anvil over the head. I was very surprised, but I knew she needed to go on the pharmaceuticals because she was in dire need of stabilization, and they do work really well for that.
Yeah.
And I also knew that I wanted her on a complementary protocol with it to support her body.
Mm-hmm.
So she's on this amazing protocol, which I won't get into now. If people are interested, they can go on jodylteiche.com and they can see all my blog posts on Sophie and our journey.
Mm-hmm.
But what I will say is probably about that Sophie.
She knows you're talking about her.
Yeah, probably. Or she sees something outside. Probably about 2.5 months ago,
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at remedies for her, maybe 3 months ago. And I'm always discussing this with her homeopathic vet. And I came across a remedy, and we had tried 1 or 2 remedies already. Then we had gotten some love.
Mm-hmm.
But I came across a remedy that I had never heard of
Mm-hmm.
called alcoholus. It's made from ethyl alcohol, but no longer has any left in it.
Correct.
Right. So I want people to understand that. I'm not feeding my dog alcohol.
No.
Yeah. And while it's used by Indian homeopaths more and more frequently now for alcoholics as sort of this bridge
Yeah.
to get them over the hump, there are certain rubrics, we call them in homeopathy, symptoms
Mm-hmm.
that really matched up with Sophie's heart disease.
Interesting.
So, and there was just something about it. So I asked, Dr. Segrera is her name, and she said, in 40 years of practice, I've never used it. She looked at it. She said, let's try it.
Mm-hmm.
So I gave Sophie 3 doses, 15 minutes apart, and then waited. And we got some love. We got some love. She perked up. She was, seemed to be doing better. And you just wait because homeopathic remedies can be working for months, in the body. And with that and the other things that I added to the protocol that the vets gave, she was doing pretty well. But of course, one of the medications that she has to take kills the kidneys.
Mm.
So it's the furosemide, the Lasix, it's the diuretic. It kills the kidneys. So you're on the seesaw constantly of trying to figure both sides out.
Yeah.
So at some point, probably about 2 months ago, a month and a half ago, she developed incontinence. And it wasn't, we didn't think the Lasix, because she had been on it already for a little while. We weren't sure what it was. Could it be kidneys, further kidney problem? We didn't know. But I went back, I had another feeling. And I went back into the Materia Medica for alcoholists.
Mhm.
And sure enough, there was something about incontinence in there.
Mhm.
So I gave her another 15-minute apart 3-dose. And a really interesting thing happened. And this is something that people should know when they use, if they choose to use homeopathy. Sometimes you get an aggravation,
Mhm.
we call it, where things get better, things get worse before they get better.
Mhm.
Sometimes the aggravation means you're on the right track and then they will start getting better. Sometimes the aggravation means you just have the wrong remedy and the body just responded in that way and then it wears off and nothing gets better.
Right.
But in this case, for 2 days after this 3-dose thing, she didn't have any incontinence, and she was having incontinence at that point probably 3 or 4 times a day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So no incontinence for 2 days. The 3rd day, she had 2 accidents, and then that night, of course, it was like midnight, these things always happen when
Always.
everything is closed.
Yeah.
She sat up in my bed. I was still up, thank goodness. And she had this strange look on her face. And I noticed that she was breathing rapidly. So I took her resting respiratory. It was high. I called the emergency room. And literally within 15 seconds, everything came back down to normal. We both agreed that let's observe her because she had settled back down.
Mhm.
And if I needed to, I could always put her in the car and go.
Right.
But the next morning, she was fine and she never had another incontinence again. And that lasted for over a month.
Mhm.
And she literally had a couple of accidents 2 days ago. I gave her Alcoholist. So far, nothing. No more.
That's awesome.
So this is a miracle. I mean, I say this about homeopathy over and over again when things work so beautifully, because even with homeopathic, you know, doctors, naturopathic doctors who have been practicing homeopathy in practice,
Yep.
with a practice for 40 years, yes, they have a lot of experience, but it's also experimentation, because you can take the symptoms, you can know and look, but you really just don't know until you try it if it's going to resonate to that degree with the body, the energy in the body. So this was a win, a big win.
Mhm.
I'm very excited about it.
That's awesome.
Thank
That's, I mean, that's what's so amazing about homeopathy. But
you.
I do have a question. So going back to your story, when you were talking about aggravation, but you didn't see any aggravation for like the first, what, day or
2
so?
days.
2 days. And
Yeah,
then something
the
like
3rd day.
weird on the 3rd day, or did that make you question with the remedy, or was that like, was that the remedy, um, what am I working what word am I thinking of?
Give me a hint. I didn't question the remedy.
Right.
Um, well, the only thing that I questioned was, did it trigger something in her that was not gonna be good?
Right.
And, I mean, that doesn't happen really with homeopathy unless you prove
Yeah.
a remedy, which
Yeah.
you'd have to, the way you would prove it,
Just do it for
which
us.
really means, for people that don't know what that is, it means when a healthy person with no symptoms took that remedy in high doses, they would develop the symptoms that a sick person that took that remedy, it would cure.
Yes.
So, but you'd have to give it in a high potency
Mhm.
over and over again to prove it. And I
Right.
only gave her 30C.
Yeah.
and I gave her only 3 doses. So the chances of that weren't likely, but I did wonder, but I didn't question whether I gave her the right remedy. I just questioned whether it was creating something that I was gonna be, you know,
Yeah.
unhappy about.
I think what I was trying to think of is the healing response. What do you call that?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Oh,
What is it that
both
we?
having senior moments here simultaneously.
Yes.
Um,
Um,
oh,
you
Jody.
know what I'm talking
I
about.
know exactly what you're talking about. I know exactly what, and that's is what an aggravation when you're on the right track is.
Yeah,
That is exactly what it is.
it's kind of
Um,
it's a symptom that shows you that it's the body's responding. It's like it's a healing response, but there's a different term, and I can't think of that.
yes, and I know exactly what it is. I have it right over there in one of my modules for homeopathy sitting on my table.
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, it's yes, that does happen, and you have to wait. A rookie mistake is to try another remedy right away,
Mhm.
but part of practicing homeopathy is a lot of waiting. It's a lot of waiting
And how,
because it takes time for the body to respond sometimes.
right.
Less so with acute, more so with chronic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I was also going to ask, well, when it comes to pets, unless you are an animal communicator and you have that ability to ask them how they're feeling, what they're feeling, where they're feeling, how long they're feeling, and be able to really know
Yeah.
when you look at the materia medica, how to match things up, it can be very challenging.
Yes,
So
it can.
how do you best go about that?
Okay. Um, Number one is because I do a lot of my sessions remotely. I have clients all over the country and some in Canada.
Mhm,
I rely a lot on a pet parent, but I school them.
mhm,
I educate them on what to look for. So, is your animal drinking more or less than normal? Or
mhm,
are they a thirsty animal in general or a thirstless animal? Do they like standing in front of the air conditioner or do they want to be under warm blankets? Do they like being out in the open air? Do they like cuddling up next to you when they're sick or do they want to be left alone?
mhm.
I ask a lot of questions in a case taking
Yeah,
to get down to the nitty-gritty of everything that I can in terms of the mind symptoms. So what do they like, their personality, how they respond, think, their quirks.
mhm,
Quirks are so important
yeah,
because sometimes it's called strange, rare, and peculiar symptom
mhm,
that is going to stand out and
right,
guide you to the right remedy. So the mind and then whatever the chief complaint is, the key
mhm,
symptom,
mhm,
and everything else. It's a very holistic. So I rely a lot on my pet parents and I ask a lot of good questions in
yeah,
my intake. And then, sometimes we have to experiment,
mhm,
especially if it's a chronic issue
yeah,
that's been going on a long time and it's deep.
mhm,
Usually one remedy in chronic is not going to get you there.
right, right,
Usually, one remedy will take you from A to C, and then another one from D to whatever, and then another
yeah,
one, etcetera. But each time, you get as much love as you can from a remedy by waiting and waiting until you see there's no other love to get.
mhm,
Then you retake the case with what you have left, and then you go back and you look again.
mhm,
So, you're moving the ball down the field with your new set of symptoms every time, and
yeah,
that can get you there.
yeah.
Yeah.
And for people who don't know what case taking is, like if they've never worked with a homeopathic person, talk about that. Like,
Okay, so case taking is a very, very mind, body, spirit version, but much deeper and involving the mind, body, and the spirit version of when you go to your conventional doctor and he starts asking you some questions about your complaint.
Mhm.
With homeopathic case taking, you're going to take that and times it by 1,000. So literally, I ask questions. I will go from the top of the animal's head
Mhm.
down to the tip of its tail with my questions, um, to just because sometimes, pet parents, they're focused on the one thing, but in homeopathy, you never focus on one symptom alone. That's
Mhm.
called one-sided disease, and it's very rare that it actually is a one-sided disease. Um, so sometimes doing it that way will jog their memory and say, "Oh, right, and Fluffy has stuff going on with his ear, and for the last blah blah blah." So that's how we do it. We literally go down the body, through the whole body, and I ask a lot of questions, and that is called the case taking. And once that's done, I take a lot of notes. And once that's done, I have a program that I go into. I
Mhm.
didn't for years. I did everything by hand, and it took me hours and hours and hours and hours and hours.
Yes. It's a lot of
So it's a lot of work, repertory and materia medic work. Wow.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
now I have everything on a platform, so it will literally pull up from the various repertories. There are tons of them that I have, all the different possible remedies from the symptoms that I plug in. But you have to know how to plug in a symptom.
Mhm.
No, a lot of it is 1800s language. So you learn over time what to look for and how to look for it,
And to word it.
how to
And
word it.
so that
Yeah.
it matches what comes up in the way the materia medica is written, right? Because
Yes, the
otherwise,
repertory
it
too. Yeah.
won't come up. They're like, "No, nothing here." It's like,
Yeah,
"Oh, I
yeah.
need something there."
And you have to go at it from different angles sometimes because that may reveal something that
Mhm.
didn't come up before but could be the very thing.
Right.
So, yes, so then I'll go into my program and I always have a 1, 2, and 3 choice. And so I have backups, to try if the first one doesn't give us love. And yeah, and I also educate my pet parents that that may happen. Homeopathy is not like taking a pharmaceutical drug where it imposes something on the body and you see immediate results, but you also have side effects and you're also suppressing the body or palliating something.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Mhm. That's so interesting. I remember when I was doing a consultation with a homeopathic vet one time, and she was going through all of the case taking information, right? And then asking me tons of questions. And I have to admit, the questions are so detailed
Yes.
that I really didn't have a lot of answers for her because I had never, I don't know. With dogs, it might be a little easier.
Hmm.
Cats are so stoic. They hide everything, like
Dogs are too.
I'm not moving because she's gonna think something's wrong with me, and I'm just not gonna give her any sign whatsoever. I'm just gonna sit here, and I'm just gonna fake it, because
Yeah.
so stoic. So a lot of things she was asking me, I'm like, no, I don't notice anything with that. No, I don't notice anything with that. I don't
Yeah.
know. I
Yeah.
don't know. It's like,
This is why it's a challenge to
yeah,
be a homeopath in the pet space. Sometimes it takes more patience and sometimes it takes a little more trial and error.
yeah.
Um, but dogs are like that too. If you think back to historical times, if they showed weakness and vulnerability, they could be attacked and left out of the pack and abandoned.
Mhm.
So they're stoic too. And oftentimes pet parents of dogs don't know something is wrong until they really start presenting and they can't hide it anymore.
Right.
But yes, cats, they are special creatures, those kitty cats. Yes.
they are, what do I call, independent thinkers.
Oh, yes, they are.
Like,
They
no, you do
definitely are.
it
Absolutely.
my way, or I'm not playing, you know?
Yep, absolutely.
That's
But
just
there are I mean, there are different modalities too. Homeopathy is beautiful because it's science meets art. It
Mhm.
really is science meets art medicine, and it is medicine. It was created by a doctor who was trained conventionally in med school, Dr.
Mhm.
Samuel Hahnemann, who got disillusioned and left his practice, closed his practice down because back then in the late 1700s and early 1800s, if you had something wrong with you, woe is you, because you went to the doctor, they leeched you, they bloodlet you, they gave you things like mercury. The things that they did to you, oftentimes, sometimes more than not, would kill you
Yeah,
before it would cure you.
yeah.
So, and this is part of the problem why homeopathy is so poo-pooed by so many people today, because back then, when I think it was like in the 1820s it started. Um, you had all these conventionally trained doctors who were now becoming homeopaths
Yeah.
because they too were disillusioned. And their counterparts were, I mean, think about it,
Mhm.
bloodletting, leeching, or taking a little sugary pill and going home and feeling better.
Well, and what patient wants to sign up for bloodletting, you know?
Yeah, raise
No,
your
thank
hands.
you. I'm not going there. I'll go
Yeah.
somewhere else, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
so
this
they were
is
losing patients.
no.
They were losing patients right and left, and they felt it in the pocketbook and
Yeah.
in the ego, and they hated it. And they started a smear campaign. And about 3 or 4 years after the truly first national medical association in the US, which was the Homeopathic Association, uh, these this group of conventional doctors created the AMA. And they created the AMA with the sole purpose of taking back control of medicine.
Yes.
And that's what they did. They
Yep.
just ridiculed and smeared the doctors, the practice of
Mhm.
homeopathy,
Mhm.
and it went underground for literally 100
Mhm.
years, 150 years, until the 70s, the 1970s, it started to reemerge. But you look online now and you can still find these people who generation after generation after generation were taught it's placebo, it's woo-woo medicine, it's bogus, it's, quackery. So it's a challenge.
Yeah.
Um, and I know it works. You know it works. It's been working for close to 300 years. There is so much, um, there are so many case studies now, and even scientific studies
Right.
that show that it does work.
Right.
So,
For our viewers who are not familiar with what homeopathy actually is, can
sure.
you explain what it is and how it works?
Absolutely. I hope Sophie isn't making too much noise in the background. She'll stop eventually.
We're good.
Good. So homeopathy is energy medicine. And the reason I say that is because the premise of it is when you take a substance, animal, mineral, plant, those
Mhm.
are the different types of things that homeopathic remedies can be made out of, and you make it into a homeopathic remedy, what you're doing is over and over and over and over and over again, sometimes thousands and tens of thousands of times, depending on the potency level, you are diluting and then succussing, which is
Mhm.
very rapid pounding
Mhm.
on something hard. Now they have machines that do this.
Yep.
And the act of diluting, the reason why Dr. Hahnemann created this method was when he was originally giving substances to healthy people as subjects to prove, they were getting really sick and he didn't want to cause pain. So he found that by diluting these substances to a certain sweet spot,
Mhm.
it would have the action of creating the symptoms in the healthy person without making them so sick.
Right.
But then well, let me back up, because when he first did the dilutions, what he really found was that it didn't create the effect, the desired effect. And there are lots of stories about this. Nobody knows what's true because it's so long ago. But one story is that he was frustrated and he was banging it on his Bible. Or another story is they were bouncing around in the saddlebag on his horse. But whatever it is, the action of the rapid, hard shaking, he discovered that it released the energy of that substance that had been so diluted. And now that that energy was in the water and alcohol preparation, it worked. The dilution made it so it didn't kill the person, and the succussion made it so it actually had an effect. So this dual combination is the process to make a homeopathic remedy homeopathic. Now, once you have that energy medicine, you know, and your tribe probably knows that we're all made up of energy, because you're an energy geek like me. And everything around us is made up of energy. And when we have an illness or our pet has an illness, that has a specific energy attached to it, a frequency.
Yes.
And the purpose of this deep dive case taking is to arrive at a remedy that, when given in the right potency and dose, is going to match and be just a little bit stronger than the energy in the body, so that it will overtake the sick energy. It will make it go away gradually, and then the homeopathic energy eventually dissipates out of the body, and you have a person or an animal that's healing. So that is how it, broad strokes, it works. And because we have so many frequencies, I mean, every chromosome has its own frequency in the body. So it really is, and every illness has its own frequency, every bacteria, virus, that's part of the frequency scanner too. We've got all of these different frequencies for different viruses and bacteria. And that's something, if we have time, we can talk about that too. But so that's why it's so important to get the symptoms right, so that you can, find the right things in the repertory, and then find the right, remedies, and then research them in the materia medica and see which most closely matches your patient or your animal. And if you get it right, that's what will happen. You choose the right potency, you choose the right dosing with the right remedy, and it will do that. And, it may sound incredibly complicated, and it is very deep. It's like an onion. You can study homeopathy your whole life and still have a lot to learn. But to deal with acute situations for your own pets, it's not that difficult to learn, especially because there are some key remedies that, people tend to go to, even though that's a no-no in homeopathy, because it's so bio-individual. It's so about how your animal is expressing that particular thing that it has. Sometimes you have enough provings with something that you can try it and see if it works, because if it doesn't, no harm is going to be done.
Right.
You just move on to the next remedy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I want to just clarify. We have a bit of an echo. I don't know if it's coming from your side or.
Hello, hello? Hello, hello?
Is it echoing now? I think
no.
Okay.
No.
I wanted to just tell people that it's the remedy stimulates the body's own vital force.
Correct.
To heal itself. So it's not like there's a magic potion in the remedy. It's like you said, it's matching a frequency, and it's stimulating that body's own ability to overcome.
That's exactly right.
Heal, which is a beautiful thing, because it's it's natural. And if, like you said, if you get the wrong remedy, and you do 1 or 2 or 3 doses, it's not the end of the world. It's not gonna harm them.
No, it's not. And by stimulating the body through its own vital force to heal itself, which it was designed to do,
Mhm.
it then strengthens itself to that very thing. So you're not as likely to come down with the same things over and over again, like these pets that have UTIs. A lot of cats get, chronic UTIs, and it's the antibiotic UTI, etc.
Mhm.
So, yeah, when the body heals itself through its own vital force, that's less likely to happen.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. Do you have any other, like, tips for people who wanna explore using homeopathy with their cat or dog?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I am going to have a course up that is a basic homeopathy course within the next couple of weeks, that you can take and learn all the basics of homeopathy and how to take your own pet's case, and how to navigate the repertory and the materia medica. Um, but also you can, look online. You can buy a materia medica, the Boyricke materia medica, and I'll put that in the chat, is one that's good for newer students
Mhm.
because, yes, the simillimum, Betsy. Um, I'm trying to add to the chat here. For some reason, it's not letting me. Oh, you know why? Because I'm not signed into my YouTube account. You
Spell
know
it.
what? I'm going to tell you because
Yeah.
that's going to be too complicated right now. So Boyricke is Boyricke. That's it. E. Boyricke. And it's a good materia medica for people that are newer because it's more consolidated. It's not pages and pages for each remedy like,
Yeah.
some of the others. And then it also has a repertory in the back. That's a very simplistic repertory, so you're not going to be able to go deep, but for the kinds of things that you
Cute.
may want to be working, at home with, it might suffice. So that's
Mhm.
another recommendation.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Let's see. I wanted to read Raquel's comment. She goes, I have a homeopathic vet that cured my cat from asthma. I love that. My cat also had a heartworm that is no longer present. We did not have any issues whenever that worm died. We are currently working on kidney issues and what may be either irritable bowel disease or lymphoma cancer. I've been thoroughly amazed at how effective homeopathy can be. I found a homeopathic doctor who is helping with my mom's cancer. I really need to understand how it works a little bit more, so I'm enjoying your explanations. That's
I'm
awesome.
so happy to hear this,
Mhm.
Raquel. That's amazing. And when you're working on kidney issues, I would love for us to connect because I'm doing that with Sophie and we can compare notes. Um, I'm always learning every day. Pam, you and I were talking about this before this started.
Mhm.
It's always a journey. So, yeah, I'm so happy. And I'm sending healing, beautiful energy for your pet and your mom. I would love to keep up with you and know how things are going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any other, like, examples of how you've used homeopathy with cats or dogs? Like, let's just say acute issues that, not something
Um,
you need to run to the vet for, medical emergencies are a totally different situation.
sure. I mean, one of my students, Sherry, her dog was experiencing a UTI. It was,
Mhm.
of course, on a Saturday night
Of course.
and no vet. And she texted me and said, "Can I call you?" And she did. But she was good. She took what she learned and she went into the repertory and the materia medica, and she came to me with a couple of options, and we both agreed on cantharis for
Mhm.
Annie. And so I helped her with potency and dosing. And the next day, no blood in the urine, and she wasn't having as much of an urging. So that was Sunday.
Mhm.
By Sunday night, she was feeling a whole lot better, and by Monday, she never had to go to the vet. So that was a win. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yes.
Now,
And that's a perfect example of what you guys can do at home.
right.
Yeah.
Now tell people how you use homeopathy, how you prepare it for cats.
Okay. So there are a couple of different ways that you can dose. And with animals, um, well, just like with people, you can dry dose, which is taking the pellets and crushing them up. I fold a piece of clean paper and then put the pellets inside that paper. You're never supposed to touch a homeopathic remedy, by the way, because we're all made up of energy. And the energy in me is going to change the energy in that remedy because the homeopathic remedy is literally coated on the outside of a sugar pill, a sucrose pill. So we never touch homeopathic remedies. We tap them into the cap and then we'll just dump them into a folded paper and then fold the paper and take a spoon and crush them. And then you can tap them in. But with cats, that's harder.
Yes.
And with some dogs, that's harder. So another way is liquid dosing. And with liquid dosing, you can take a half a glass of distilled water or filtered water, and you can tap 2 pellets in. It doesn't have to dissolve because remember the remedy's on the outside.
Yeah.
And you get someone who's experienced to tell you how many times to rapidly stir it, and what the dosing should be, how often and how much time between, and how many doses. And then you can fill a little syringe, and you don't need to get much in there. It just a touch has to get through a mucous membrane. That's it. You can have this much in a syringe and get this much in before they peel off and run away, and that's good.
Yep.
So, you'd have to do your scruff and pop them. And whatever you get in there is fine. And that is how I dose cats.
Yeah, Dr. Falconer, do you know who Dr. Falconer is?
Very well. I've taken his rabies course and I was a part of his tribe, you're like part of his thing, and we do our weekly meetings, and yes.
Yeah, he's awesome. I remember when I was taking one of his courses, he was explaining that, and this is mind-blowing for people because we come from an allopathic conventional society, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same dose that works for a mouse will work for an elephant. Do you remember?
Yes, with homeopathy, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that is like mind-blowing for people. They're like, what? I'm like,
right.
It's energy. It's not about the amount. It's about the energy and the remedy.
It's exactly right, Pam.
So it's not about dose. It's not about body weight. It has nothing.
No, and that's the thing. Pet parents say, well, my pet weighs so-and-so. How much should I give them? And I'm like, it's not about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah. There's energy medicine is incredible. I mean, we talk about this when we get together. And there are so many different types of energy medicine that pet parents could be using and they just don't know.
Yeah.
And homeopathy is definitely one. The frequencies, which you and I talked about, is another. Just literally, I mean, I have a frequency scanner that I can scan someone in China from my house in Austin. If I have some information on them or their pet, it doesn't matter because just like the dial on the radio or the remote on your TV, you don't have all the stations in your living room or in your car. It finds you through information that's unique to you or your pet, right? So, and it literally scans the body, identifies the frequencies that are out of balance, right down to the chromosome if you want, and sends from over 150,000 frequencies in the database a corresponding frequency imbalance to the body to gently coax that frequency back into balance and sends you this detailed report about where things are at in the body, whether it's for the vitals or the emotions. And it's a beautiful tool because if you scan regularly and you start to see a certain frequency or 2 or 3 that are always out of balance, a pattern, you have an ability to head something off of the past that's not a diagnosable thing. I don't even know if that's a word. Something that could be diagnosed yet is just energy at this point. So to me, that's also mind-blowing. And it's another Nikola Tesla genius invention. So I use that as well with my with the animal clients and human clients that I have as a health coach.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions before we wrap up here? I know
New comments.
Raquel says we are currently taking the next Vomica 200C, and yes, would love to connect. So
Perfect.
Yes.
Perfect. So maybe you could put my email in the chat or something. I feel like so useless. I can't put anything in the chat.
What is your website again, Jody?
My website is Jody, JODYL for Lynn, Teiche, TEICHE.com.
Okay. Yes.
Perfect. And you can connect with me there.
Raquel says, I practice the emotion code where we release trapped emotions, which is awesome.
Yes.
A dog who could not walk for 6 years, she would use her front legs to drag her body around. I released emotions for this dog over 2 sessions, and the dog started walking on all 4 legs.
Oh my God. That's incredible. I want to know more about that.
Trapped emotions are stored in the deepest connective tissue, which is typically our hips, right? Hips and lower spine. And so that is why if it is so out of balance and there's that part of the body is so loaded down with those negative frequencies, yes, it can impair mobility. I mean, I've had it experienced myself in my lower back. So I know firsthand.
I do in my hips.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Oh, it's a thing.
It's
I want to know more about that. You and I will talk after.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
that is so amazing, Raquel. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. Is anybody else having other questions? Otherwise, we will wrap things up here. I just really appreciate, Jody, you taking the time to introduce us. And your homeopathy course is going to be out in about 2 weeks, you said?
In about 2 weeks, yes. 2 to 3 weeks. What I'll do is I will get in touch with you. You can let your tribe know if you would, and I'll let my tribe know. And if any of your followers are interested in learning more, they can reach out to me.
Yeah. And then you can also go into the comments after this show is posted on Facebook. You're on Facebook, right?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. So what is your Facebook? Is it under
Jody Teiche?
Okay. So you guys can find her on Facebook. You can find her on YouTube. Are you on Instagram?
Yes.
Okay. Same thing.
I think it's the same thing. I think the pet health expert is on TikTok.
Okay.
But Jody Teiche is Instagram.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you can also go into the comments when you're ready to and post, because everyone who's watched or commented will get a notification.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
So, yeah, just something else you can add to your to-do list.
Sure, I will. No, that's a really good idea.
Yeah. So anyway, well, thank you guys so much for joining us. We hope you learned something about homeopathy. We hope that we're leaving you with feeling empowered to try something maybe you haven't tried before. Go online and just dig around. You can Google and homeopathic remedies for X condition, fill it in the blank, and then you're going to find tons of pages that come up written by amazing people that are doctors of homeopathy. A lot of them are Indian because homeopathy is so big in India.
Yes, it is.
They put a lot of their shortened, condensed of homeopathic remedies and their rubrics, and so you can go through and at least start learning, and explore and try something. It's really fascinating, like you said. When you get
it is, and energy medicine. We know this is the future of medicine.
Absolutely.
So I pray homeopathy is in lockstep with that, because it's way overdue for getting the respect that it deserves. So
absolutely,
yeah,
that's a great place to end.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you guys so much, and we will be back with more fun in the very near future. But until then, y'all have a great rest of your evening.
Bye,
And
everybody.
we'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody.